Hey guys, when I share my genealogical research with folk, most people, they'll just make comments on, wow, great to know. But then there are others who will say, how do you know that? How can you be so sure? Well, I'm going to just share with you how I go about my research as you follow me in finding Charlotte Grose. So this particular video concerns my mother's maternal line. So in other words, as my mother, Cynthia Yvonne Morgan Burton, her father, Zedekiah Morgan, who is known as Uncle Trudy. In fact, my mother didn't even know his real name on her marriage certificate. I think she had Zechariah or Zephaniah or something. Of course, everyone knew him as Uncle Trudy. Even my mother called him Uncle Trudy, even though it was her father. And then, of course, her grandmother, my grandfather's mother, who my mother knew as Annie Brown. That's all she knew her as Annie Brown. And so we're going to do a little research here. And even as I knew the name of my mother's father's mother, I was able to, and I also knew the name of her children. And so through oral history, I knew that she had several children. I knew their names. And so when I started searching for the documents to verify everything and to start building my research, I knew what names to look for. And so her oldest daughter was Ethel Morgan. And right here, we have that document. See it right here? As I said, Annie Brown and Joseph Morgan. But check this out. So my grandfather was her second child. And as you can see, his name is Zedekiah. And again, you see Joseph Morgan. But check this out. Over here, she's Elizabeth Brown. Now, that's a whole other video that I'm going to have to do. I know I wrote something about this some years ago, how many aliases she had. And they weren't really aliases. I think they were all her names. But again, she apparently was illiterate. And so whoever went to register the child would probably give the name that they knew her as, right? So we got Annie Brown. Now here is Elizabeth Brown. Now, their third child, Hyman Morgan, he died in the 1970s, actually, a year before I went to Jamaica the very first time. And, but I've been unable so far to locate his birth record. So hopefully anyone who's watching this who may have it, can let me know, if you find that birth record. But this is his actual picture. This is my grandfather's brother. And to date, this is the only picture of my grandfather's siblings that I have. I don't have a picture of my grandfather. I understand my grandfather looked just like him, according to my cousin Patrick. They were dead ringers, but, I haven't seen, actually, if cousin Patrick is watching this, no, I think he said he was a dead ringer to some Hollywood actor or something. But anyway, apparently they look alike. So there's Hyman Morgan. And then here we have Charlotte Groves Morgan again. See the father, Joseph Morgan. But notice here, remember the first one, she was Anne Brown. Second one, Elizabeth Brown. Now she's Anne Elizabeth. Check this out, Williams. We're going to see how that connects later. But same person. All right. And then Barter Morgan. I don't believe Barter was his real name. In fact, need to connect with his grandson, Nehemiah, just to see if he knows what his grandfather's real name was. I'm thinking it's probably something like Bartholomew or something, but everyone knew him as Uncle Barter, just like I knew my grandfather's Uncle Trudy. If I said to someone, oh, I'm Zedekiah's grandson, they'll say, who? Okay. But anyway, Barter Morgan. And notice over here too, okay, this is now Elizabeth Brown. Okay, the same name that she has on my grandfather's birth certificate. And then we have, moving on here, Japheth Morgan. And Japheth Morgan, see Joseph Morgan, there's Daddy. But over here, oh, by the way, notice that Daddy is the occupier of the house. They weren't married. Okay, so he's just the occupier, which is good because there are many times when whoever's doing the registering refused to put the father's name down if they were not married. But for those who are doing research, and you can see over here, role of professor of father. They knew he was a cultivator, but they crossed it out when they found out, oh, they're not married, but so he's just an occupier, right? Like a whole bunch of virgin births or something. I don't know. But anyway, here we go. So notice here then, Anne Elizabeth Williams, not Brown, but Williams. And as we're going to see with the next one, oops, we're not going to see with the next one. I thought I had one more, but not Japheth is the youngest. Okay, so we got that. I thought there was another one of Elizabeth Williams, but I guess not. All right, so that's it. I'm not going to redo this. You know, this is the second time I'm doing this, actually, because I made a mistake in the first one. I said, make a mistake again. That's okay. All right, so here we go. So Japheth Morgan, 1902. So I saw a couple anomalies, and the anomalies, things that stood out sort of thing, right? And so with this one, if you notice the children here, we have the 6 children, even though my great-grandmother actually had 7 children. Her first child was a different father. I'm told, again, oral history, his name was Mortimer Matthews, and apparently he was a fully white person, and he was something called a watcher, but that's a whole other story, right? But so I was told his name was Mortimer Matthews. Again, I've not found a document for him. That may have been his real name. And so again, if anyone is researching these names and you actually know his name, please let me know. But apparently his name was Mortimer Matthews. I found information on a Mortimer Matthews actually. But again, I have not found a way to verify whether this is my great uncle. But again, looking at these names over here, Ethel Morgan, Zedekiah Morgan, Hyman Morgan, Charlotte Grose Morgan, Barton Morgan, Jeffrey Morgan. I know I said it real quick, but notice only one of them actually has a middle name, Charlotte Grose Morgan. That is an anomaly. And where does this come from? Okay, looking again, Charlotte Groves. All right, interesting middle name. Now, when I saw that, I'm thinking, that couldn't be right. I mean, Groves, that doesn't even sound like a name, right? And so I actually, when I saw this, based upon this next gospel document over here, said, listen, you've made an error. Okay? So Family Search, I am an indexer for Family Search, actually. And so I'm not sure if everyone has the rights to make changes or suggest changes, but I did. I suggested a change. I said, listen, based upon this document over here, as you can see, her middle name is not Groves, it's Louise. And I just figured the person who wrote Groves over here, let me go to the previous one, just didn't know how to write properly, right? And if you close one eye and stand in your head, you can see how that kind of looks like Louise, right? And in fact, I'm assuming that Charlotte, when she saw her birth certificate, probably thought, oh, my middle name is Louise, because, you know, this person just didn't know how to write, okay? So Groves or Louise. So that's one anomaly that we found. Only one person has a middle name. Why is that? Why is that? You know, so there's some sort of significance there. Why would my great-grandmother give only one of her children a middle name? Now, there's a second anomaly. Again, you see these names over here. And what I have bolded there, or at least in capitalized and highlighted yellow, is the place where they were born. So Ethel says she was born in Dover Road, Zedekiah, Garlic Hill, no record for Hyman, of course, and then Kissentown. Now, I know if you ask my mother where she was from, she would say, I'm from Kissentown, even though she's really from a place called Biles, you know, just before you get to Kissentown, but it's like a suburb of Kissentown, even though Kissentown is country anyhow, so it's like country of the country sort of thing. So anyway, she's from Biles, but she's from her people from Kissentown, right? And so Kissentown, which by the way was one of the free counties, whatever you, I forget what they call it. Oh goodness, with Sligoville, Kissentown. This was one of the places where enslaved people, you know, were able to start afresh real quick, right? So I wasn't supposed to say anything about that. I've done a little bit more research so I could say it better than I just did say it. But anyway, so Kitsentown. So they're in Kitsentown, and when I saw Dover Road, I said, well, that's not Kitsentown, but I know Dover Road is a road in Kitsentown that kind of goes up to Dover, and Dover is sort of another suburb of Kitsentown, if you can say it's a suburb of Kitsentown, because those who know Kitsentown, well, now it's kind of more built up, if I could use that term, than it was. But Dover Road was kind of even more bush than Kitsentown. And going to Dover Road, you actually go right through. You have to go through my family's land. All right. When I say my family, it's the Morgan's land. You got to go through that to actually get up to where Dover is. And so Dover Road, that didn't really confused me at all, because I knew there's a place called Dover and it says get to Dover and it is in Kitsentown, right? But I saw Garlic Hill. I'm like, oh, where's Garlic Hill? So what I basically did, I just asked a few family members, where's Garlic Hill? I didn't tell them why. And they said, oh, that's our family and that's where your grandfather's buried, etc. So I was like, aha. So Garlic Hill is something specific to the family, right? So I'm thinking specific to the Morgans, and so I'm associating Garlic Hill now with the Morgans. And so as I'm doing my research, I'm looking specifically for references to Garlic Hill, right? Because this is that second anomaly over here. Again, this is my grandfather's birth certificate. Again, his is the only one that has Garlic Hill on there. And so as I'm doing my research, I'm looking specifically for references to Garlic Hill. So where does this take me? Well, I bump into a document, and this is probably about 3 or 4 years after learning that Garlic Hill is associated with the family. I bump into this document where someone called Ada Williams gives birth to a male child. And so here's Ada Williams, Garlic Hill, and someone else is there with her. This person called Ellen Lakin. I don't know who this Ellen Lakin is, but she's here at Garlic Hill with Ada Williams, who's given birth to a male child. Now, of course, Garlic Hill, I'm saying, okay, has to be a relative. And then look at the last name over here, Williams. Where have you seen it before? Well, with Anne Elizabeth Williams, right, who is my great grandmother, right? So we have Ada Williams and Elizabeth Williams, obviously sisters, right? And so I know from other records that their father's name, in fact, everyone knew him as Dr. Brown, Dr. Brown or Joseph Brown. In fact, if you go back to my grandfather's, let me do that, to my grandfather's birth certificate, notice over here, here's his father's name, Joseph Morgan, and here is the name of Joseph Brown present at birth. Not his father, who is Joseph Morgan, but this is actually his grandfather, who used to deliver babies in the area, right? That's why they called him Dr. Brown, even though he wasn't a real doctor, but they used to call him Dr. Brown. So here we have Ada and Elizabeth Williams, sisters, and the daughters of so-called Dr. Brown, but Dr. Brown is Joseph Brown Williams, Joseph Brown Williams. And I'm not doing it in this presentation, but there are other documents where I actually have his surname as Williams and not Brown, right? So Ada and Elizabeth Williams, my great grandmother and her sister. So this was just a great find over here. Now, this was a gift that just kept on giving, right? So I was able to find Ada's birth record, right? And I found out that Ada, middle name Litella Lakin. Hold on, we're going to come back there a second. I probably should have started with this whole thing about Garlic Hill, because Ada, she's born in Garlic Hill. So here she is, Ada Litella Lakin. Remember the name that we saw on her birth certificate, Ellen Lakin. Guess what? Ellen Lakin is her mama, right here. Ellen Lakin is her mama. So in finding this now, didn't only find out the name of my great-grandmother's sister, but I also found out the name of my second great-grandmother, Ellen Lakin. Oh my goodness. But guess what? As I said, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because there's another name on this birth record. And it's right here in this section. Okay. So you see the reference to Garlic Hill. But look at this name over here. Charlotte Grose. I know someone's saying, well, that's not Groves, Groves. No, it's Gross. And those who do genealogy know that there are going to be several names in which several ways in which a name is spelled. Just like we got Annie Brown, Annie Williams, Anne Elizabeth Brown, that's just genealogy. So this is the Charlotte Groves that we saw on my great-grandmother's daughter's record. She is not Charlotte Louise, but Charlotte Grose. All right? And even here, as we're going to see, it's not spelled how it should be spelled. And who was she? She is the grandmother of Ada. Again, it's right here. And so on this document alone, I not only have my great-grandmother's sister's name, but I have my great-grandmother's mother, Ellen Lakin, and my third great-grandmother, who is Charlotte Grose. Oh my goodness, what a found. Ada's gift. So I'm saying now, okay, what can I find out about Charlotte Grose? What can I find about Charlotte Grose? Hey, this took me down a trail of tears. I know I've done a video before about being connected to the House of Windsor, through King Alfred, etc., etc., etc. Okay, actually through King Edgar, but through King Alfred, but we went back to King Edgar, the peaceful, etc., right? And so we know we got all the receipts for that, done all the research for that, so we know that. But this trail of tears took me to a place called Fuller's Rest. Sounds like a very peaceful place, but it's actually Fuller's Rest Plantation. Fuller's Rest Plantation. And I came across Charlotte Grose's name on this document because she was among several people who were added to the Fuller's Rest estate, or the Fuller's Rest Plantation, from the Thetford estate. Thetford estate was in the parish of St. Dorothy, which became absorbed into the parish of St. Catherine. Parish of St. Dorothy actually is in the area now that they call Old Harbor. That used to be St. Dorothy. And this area, St. Dorothy, St. John, St. Catherine, all in the same general area. Actually, St. Dorothy and St. John and Vere, actually, part of Vere was absorbed into St. Catherine. And what I had there, I put this picture here because this is one of the great houses on Thetford Estate. This was not the original great house. I thought it was when I first found it, but this was actually built in the late 1800s. The original great house, apparently some of the ruins are still there. And so this is not the one. When I first found this, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is what my third great grandmother must have been looking at, during their days of enslavement. But of course, this was built after the period of enslavement. So this is a trail of tears, took us back to Fuller's Rest. And as we're going to see over here, okay, Catherine Grose, my goodness, I see an error over here. That should be Charlotte's lot, not Catherine's lot. But why did I put Catherine down there? Well, because as you see over here, she is on this record with her sister Catherine. And as you can see, even at this time, there were a couple of spellings for their name. One is, I think, Grose and Grose. And so as you can see over here, Catherine Grose, alias Catherine Grose, and Charlotte Grose. This was my third great grandmother. All right, alias Charlotte Grose, I think that is, so you can see the spelling over there, right? And so these are just the spellings over there. So I can see now one of her sisters. She had a sister called Catherine. But again, this is a record of enslavement. a record of enslavement, where they've been transferred to the fullest rest estate from the Thetford estate. And what makes it even more astounding is that, as you can see, they are listed as being quadroon, all right? So quadroon, ditto, 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 as being quadroon. And this is actually a picture of their father, as Nicholas Grose. He was an enslaver at a plantation in Clarendon, and had some children with my fourth great-grandmother. I guess he is my fourth great-grandfather. In fact, he's the one through whom I was able to trace my connection to King Edgar and King Charles, etc. So this, again, was Catherine's lot. She was a quadroon, all right? Still enslaved. Still enslaved. More European genes than African genes, but still enslaved, all right? But there's more that we find over here, actually, some of the deeper roots, because on the same document, as we see with Catherine Grose and Charlotte Grose, we see that they were daughters of Sarah James, an interesting spell of Sarah with an E over here, Sarahe, James. And so we're able to find out, again, get to my fourth great-grandmother, Sarah James. And so this was another fantastic find. And there's something we're going to find out about Sarah James. Actually, you don't have to find out about her at all, because the fact that they were quadroons meant that Sarah James herself would have been a mulatto. She was a mulatto. All right. So her father's name was James. Now, we also know she had a sister called Nancy. You see Nancy over here. Don't know too much about Nancy. But here, Sarah and Nancy James over there. But their names are here, so then we know that we must also have, well, not we must also have, but if their mother's still alive, then we're going to know who their mother was. And lo and behold, right here, these two were daughters of Sibel. We don't have a last name for Sibel, but they were daughters of Sibel. And so, hey, we've now gone back to my fifth great-grandmother, Sibel, right? Now, there's another James over here, and unfortunately, now she's obviously related to these two, and I didn't link her in here because she is not the daughter of Sibel. She has another parent, and it looks like her mother's name was Sarah too, but based upon the ages, and I have the ages kind of blocked out over here, but based upon the ages, she was not Sarah's daughter. Should have been Sarah's half-sister, I'm assuming. All right. But we do know, however, that for Sarah, spelled with E, and spelled with E on this document, on later documents, because I also have her death document and doesn't have an E on it. But anyway, we know that their mother's name was Sibel. So that was a great find by the name of my fifth great-grandmother. And I kept digging. Oh, by the way, this was an 1829 document. Again, we're going to enslave another 4 years, wanting to know how to compensate, etc. Right? And so now that I saw the name Sibel, I said, okay, let me look. And of course, they're being transferred to the Thetford estate over here, rather to the fullest rest estate from the Thetford estate. All right. And notice she's the daughter of Sibel over here. So I'm saying, okay, in the same document, maybe this is where Sibel was. And surely, when I look at the same document over here in another part, check this out. All right. Here is Sibel's name over here. She's 37 years old at the time. Okay. Here is Sibel. And guess what we have? We also have her mother's name. Her mother's name is Grace. Now, you'll notice that Sibel is referred to as a Creole. And as a Creole, that means she was born in Jamaica. She was a Negro, as you can say. She's African, born in Jamaica. Had she been born in Africa, this column would have said African. So I don't know where Grace was born. Grace could have been born in Africa. I don't know where she was born because I've not found a record of her mother. But in this document over here, I have the names of my 5th great-grandmother, Sibel, and my 6th great-grandmother, Grace. And this is where the war stops. In genealogy, we call this hitting a brick wall. So guys, that's it. And again, it was just an exciting journey for me. And I'm just grateful to have you join me in finding Charlotte Grose and the gifts I got from finding Charlotte Grose, being able to go back to my 6th great grandmother. Okay, hope to see you all again. Peace.